Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Blockcast. I'm your host Simon with my co-host Will. How are you today, Will?
Doing great, Simon. What's today's topic?
Today we are talking about another layer 2, which is the AZTEC network. So you want to give us a briefing of what the AZTEC network is, mate?
Aztec is a personal favorite of mine. It's done a lot of contributions for the last couple of years in zero-knowledge proofs. What they have currently that's super exciting is ZK Money, which is a layer 2 that is super fast. The best thing about it is that it's zero-knowledge as well, so it's private. And that's an amazing deal.
Why is privacy so important, do you think, for the ecosystem, for Ethereum, for blockchain in general?
Privacy is super important. And the reason that is that blockchains as they are currently are completely open in that when anybody transacts, everybody can see exactly what we're doing. And not only that, everybody can see our balances. Now, that's not usually a problem because blockchain addresses are just a string of numbers that doesn't really mean anything. But then we also dox ourselves without realizing that we have. When that happens, that becomes a massive problem. If anybody can connect your Ethereum address to your identity, that means they can tell everything that you've done since the history you've had with blockchain. They can tell exactly how much you have, what tokens you have, what you have spent on, and when.
And the solution that the AZTEC network is using the ZK rollups, which is maybe something we won't go into technically now. Maybe that's for another talk. But let's just specifically talk about this layer 2 network. What about it is different?
So, Simon, there's plenty of layer 2 networks out there, and they all do a great job. The problem is that a lot of these layer 2s are not private. And so what Aztec brings to the ecosystem is privacy, and they do this through zero-knowledge proofs. Without really getting into the complications of how ZK proofs work, all they do is they attest certain facts about certain things without actually transferring information. For example, real-world case, you might want to enter a nightclub, for example, and the bouncer might want to know if you're old enough. So what a zero-knowledge proof will do is it will attest to the bouncer that you're old enough without actually giving away your age, your birth date, your location, which is exactly what happens when you present your ID card to the bouncer, right? So this is exactly how ZK proofs work in the blockchain, in that if you want to send me money in exchange for something that I'm going to send to you, all you need to know is, do I have enough money to pay for the item? And so how zero-knowledge proofs work is that they attest for this without sending information. And this is Aztec's key offering, is its privacy for everybody.
I think the big thing about this is that because it is a layer 2 on the Ethereum network, so it gets to use all the network effects of the Ethereum ecosystem. So that, I think, is the real power here, is that we're talking about not just a privacy layer, we're talking about a privacy layer that interacts with all of the things that you know and use on the Ethereum ecosystem.
Oh yeah, so this is a key difference between Aztec and other ZK layers. So what Aztec does is that, number one, it lets you deposit your tokens onto the layer 2. Once you're on that layer 2, your tokens are completely safe. No one can tell what you're doing with them. But then the key thing is that while most other layer 2s just let you keep your tokens there, what Aztec does, it allows you to invest them or use them in any way you want on layer 1. You can deposit your Ethereum onto ZK Money, and from that layer 2, you can actually deposit them back into Aave, and that way it is impossible to track exactly what's happening with your money. So Aztec is great in that it introduces a really cool way of keeping private, being on layer 2, using less gas, but at the same time being able to use your tokens on layer 1. And that's a huge deal.
So let's talk about, I guess, from the developer's perspective, Nor language they've written for the AZTEC network. So what's the benefits of that? How does it differ from Solidity on the Ethereum network, and why would people want to use it?
Both languages are good. Nor is definitely newer, and I believe that they're still working on it, so they haven't released it yet. One challenge that developers have when they're working on zero-knowledge proofs is that it's a very complicated thing to build, and in most cases, they need to build this thing themselves. So that introduces the possibility, the risk of errors. Now, what Nor does is that it abstracts all of this complexity So it reduces the complexity for developers, and all they have to do is write much less for the same effect, and probably with higher security. Since they're writing less code, they're also less likely to make mistakes.
So how easy would it be for someone who's already got something running on Solidity? Like, let's say I want to copy and paste Uniswap onto the Aztec network.
Aztec already has this solution. They already have SDKs that do not work on Noir, whereas an SDK is interesting. It's more interesting and more versatile to have a language that is completely dedicated to ZK proofs with all of the abstractions that you need to get your proofs done. Everything from sending tokens to having different kinds of attestations.
Okay, so what you're saying is basically you don't need to copy and paste a Uniswap onto it because of the way it currently works, and it already talks back up to the layer 1 in a private way. How does it work? Does it need large amounts of liquidity, kind of like Tornado Cash needs large amounts of liquidity to hide it? Is that how the Aztec network works?
How it works is that instead of forcing Uniswap and all of these other services to port all of their liquidity and move it onto the layer 2, what it does is it just lets them connect. And just by changing the interfaces very slightly, it allows you to jump into the layer 2. That obscures your transactions. And then once you're there, you can jump back in without anybody knowing who it was. So there's a caveat to that, in that if it's just me and you on Aztec, and we both deposit our tokens on Aztec, and tokens come from Aztec and into Aave, well, it's likely that it's one of us who's probably doing it. But then, like you're right, the more users that use Aztec, the more secure it is. And there's a term for it, it's actually called the anonymity set. And so the more people that use Aztec, the more applications that integrate with Aztec, the more secure it becomes. So there's still things we can do to be more secure as we use Aztec, but then generally, as more and more people use it, it becomes much more secure for everybody.
Sure. So if you've got like 100 users who have gone onto the Aztec network, and one person there went to use Uniswap, they wouldn't know which of those 100 it was anyway. So you've already blended there, but then you might have another person who's using Aave. So now, you don't know whose money is going to Aave, whose money is going to Uniswap. So it all kind of gets blended in. So security is in the liquidity from all the people who move onto the Aztec network. Unlike Tornado Cash, which only had, I guess, privacy because enough people came onto the Tornado Cash app itself.
Aztec network is almost an advanced mixer, but there's really a lot of things going on in there. So if there's 100 people in there and one of them uses Aave and then they withdraw, fine. Maybe you can almost guess who it is. There's algorithms that try to trace this. But then the thing that makes it more complicated is that inside Aztec, there's still people trading in that layer 2. So I might jump in there with 100 ETH. You might jump in there with 500 ETH. We might trade. And once a bit of ETH comes up from that network, it's impossible to know whose it was, what the balances are. So it really protects everything by being a more advanced mixer. And from the outside, it just looks like one wallet trading on behalf of everybody.
Absolutely. But let's talk about the big elephant in the room, sanctions. Can Aztec network be sanctioned?
That's a massive one, Simon. And that is a question that we can't answer. Unfortunately, governments do not regulate by policy. They don't regulate by guidelines. All they've been doing currently is just regulating by enforcement. So it makes it really hard for a protocol to know whether what it's doing is correct or not. The good thing is that once the code is out there, it's unstoppable. So really, even if the developers want to take that code down, it can really be taken down. It's important to comply with rules. I think it's very important to make sure that bad actors are not allowed to participate. None of us want to be hacked. None of us want our tokens to be stolen. So it's important that we stop these bad actors. The good thing with the blockchain is that, yes, on one side, regulators are trying to do it, and they're creating this evolutionary pressure in that the coders in the blockchain have to think about how to keep it safe. Now, the question is, what interesting solutions will they come up with? Because ideally, you want blockchains to work without regulation. It's possible that blockchains can regulate themselves, maybe through DAOs or some other thing, but it's very difficult to know exactly how the governments will react to this. Because if I'm a hacker, for sure, I can deposit my tokens into Aztec and do whatever I want with them. But then on the other side of the coin is that, at least for us innocent folks, nobody is tracking our money anymore, and it's back to the good old days where we could trade cash, and it was just between me and you, Simon, and it was nobody's business what happened. So on one side, I really support Aztec, and I'm really excited about them. But then on another side, there's that issue of bad actors that do have to be stopped. And then on the other side as well is the governments who might be trying to stop those bad actors, but they might not be doing it in the best way. While really they should be working with blockchain developers rather than ruling by enforcement.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, mate. Mate, I think that's a very well articulated point of view there. So let's talk about my favorite thing, though. So what's the investment opportunity here? So from my perspective, I mean, I'm pretty sure Aztec uses Ethereum as its gas. So that then adds to, I guess, the network effects of Ethereum. So therefore, that makes, the bull case for Ethereum stronger. We now have another network which uses privacy using Ethereum. Therefore, Ethereum is more valuable. The other aspect, I guess, of investment opportunities, I guess, would be whatever these new applications that people can think up of that exist on the Now language, I guess, which I guess would be native to Aztec. I think looking to see what people can come up with there is probably the other element of investment opportunity here. But as we talked about, the risk really is around sanctions and whether or not this will be allowed to continue. So what about you? What are your thoughts on investment opportunities in this space?
Oh yeah, definitely a massive bull case for Ethereum, number one. Apps on Ethereum will benefit from Aztec if they can connect to it. Huge deal there. The other thing is that Aztec is a new network. It's a layer 2, so other apps might build on top of that. So it might be really interesting to see what kind of apps that have privacy end up on that network. They might be really interesting things that we've never thought about. What can you do with privacy on the blockchain? And then the other thing might obviously be Aztec itself. So they haven't released a token, but we can probably expect to see one in the future. It probably will be a governance token. It might be used for gas as well, but it's probably in Aztec's best interest to release a token. So
that will probably be similar, I guess, to probably Optimism's method, where it would basically airdrop to people who started using it. It was an incentivization to try and bring people onto the network. And I think that's what Aztec will probably be doing here. I don't think they'll use it for gas. I think it'll stay Ethereum, but maybe that could change. I don't know if they can actually change that later on. I think it will be a token airdrop for users of the network as an incentive to bring people on there.
Which is a massive incentive. And you're totally right in that it's a great way to bring people to the network. It's also what Tornado Cash did as well. So definitely worth it, playing around with the network, seeing if it's good for you. And yeah, we don't know. There might be an airdrop in the future. It's something that I would personally look forward to. And we're yet to see a token, but I believe we will see a token soon.
Awesome, mate. Well, let's leave it there. Thanks very much for your time again today.
Fantastic, Simon. Until next time.